me start with this one. Hello, Mukti. I have a question about a block I experienced during meditation practice. During deep meditative experiences, often, but not only when I take marijuana and psilocybin mushrooms, I begin to experience an overwhelming energy surge in my third eye and also emerging with the present moment that feels like I'm going to die and have to lose my sense of self to continue the experience. It is overwhelming and makes me resistant, fearful, and I don't know how to let go and go through the ego loss. How can I go through the experience of ego loss during deep meditative states without fear? And does it sound like going through the ego loss would be a positive step for my awakening? Should I stop using marijuana and psilocybin mushrooms as I feel these drugs vastly intensify my meditation and make me access deep states of meditation, perhaps that my ego is not ready for? Please let me know your thoughts on these questions. Thank you so much. So, first of all, I'm not a user of marijuana or psilocybin mushrooms, so I can't exactly comment to that, although I can say that it seems to me that those who encounter certain types of meditative states that they do so when assisted like that, that they have access to things that sometimes, as the person was indicating, sometimes they're states that the person isn't ready for, but also that they don't have a foundation for. So they might have access to those states with the assisted drugs, but then they're not able to access those states without the assistance. And so I tend to be of the mind that when a person puts in the time and encounters a maturation of their meditative prowess, I guess you could say, without the assistance, that they really develop a foundational shift in their being that tends to have great staying power. And so when a person comes back to meditation over and over again without the extra assistance, they're really developing their capacities of attention, of communing in a greater depth of knowing and being that really tends to fundamentally shift their identity. And it happens more gradually, more organically, in a way where the system does have time to organize around their new growing states of consciousness and awareness. There's also some states that come about from assistance that some of them are just simply states that you don't need to visit. But then there also are some people that report to me that there's certain states they can access that have been greatly helpful to them. So I think that when I listen to this person who wrote this question, what I hear in part of their question is, does it should I stop using marijuana and psilocybin as I feel these drugs vastly intensify my meditation and make me access deep states of meditation, perhaps that my ego is not ready for? I'm pretty sure that this is one of these cases where, as Audia would say, the answer's in the question. So it sounds like this person already has this hunch that they're accessing states that they're not ready for. And so if they took out the variables of the marijuana and psilocybin, then they may just find that they're accessing states that they are ready for. And so it's certainly worth a try to stop those things and see how the meditations go, and to see how your body and your mind feel in the absence of those. It's not always about feeling good or having like tremendous experiences. A lot about the path of realization is not so much about what we gain, even in terms of things like insight or meditative states. It's more about what we can let go of, what we can, how we can simplify the complexities of our psyche and go to very simple, quiet, peaceful places that that do fundamentally shift our central sense of self and allow it to rest and root in our essential being. So I'm a person who's more interested in where a person's essential being lies and who and what it is that we are that is present for all states, and knowing who and what we are fundamentally, very consciously. I'm interested in that more than I'm interested in what states people can access. And I think sometimes accessing all these different states can even sometimes be a disadvantage that can be a sideshow on a path of essential self realization. So often it's really about what you're in this for and what you're really interested in. Now, about the surge in the third eye, um, and the feeling of that you're going to die, these are some things that I could offer some possible uh, shifts in technique for you. If your concentration is on the third eye in meditation, you could shift your locus of concentration. Like earlier tonight, I was talking about letting your attention rest in the breath and that soothing organic rhythm of the breath. You could let that soothe your nervous system, and you're not trying to get anywhere or get like focus on any heart center or any third eye center or heart center or anything. You're just resting in that organic rhythm of the breath and just letting that organic unfolding soothe your nervous system and soothe your body and allow all the energetics of the thinking mind and the frenetics of that just come to rest and settle. Like the more you can just ease your nervous system into those soothing states, I think could be great for this person for a while to just help them reset. Sometimes the focus can be so pulled in too. It can sometimes be helpful to sort of let your attention soften and just kind of feel the space of the air around you on the surface of your skin. Feel that there is a room around you. Feel that there's a seat below you and a grounding, energetic connection to the earth below that. And you feel more like you're this person that's connected with the outer as well as the inner. Sometimes when a meditation pulls you too far in, it can be a little scary. So if you are mindful of your meditation posture, you can even hold a mudra for your hands, something like this, the Dhyana mudra. It's a way of having a set silhouette and a set posture that can tell you when you're getting pulled in too much because you'll go off alignment with your posture, or when you're getting too top heavy, or when you're getting tense. And if you keep returning to that posture and returning to that posture, the body will communicate a sense of balance to the nervous system, and then the mind tends to track onto that balanced state as well. And like most of all, just try to unhook from any agendas that you need to make anything in particular happen. A lot of realization can be about cultivating a certain inner environment for realization to bloom. It's not necessarily driving hard to seize after insight or breakthroughs. That's really the tough way to go about it, and sometimes even dangerous way to go about it. So as far as that feeling of I'm going to die, I'd look also, and then overwhelming. The feeling's overwhelming and makes you resistant and fearful. Well, of course it would, right? This idea of you're gonna die and ego loss, I'm a little bit different than a lot of teachers, and frankly, I think that it's worth listening to what I'm about to say. There's people who point a lot to ego death, and, I've even heard Adi talk about ego death, and as a listener, I understand what he's pointing to, and I understand how people can experience that death, and how when somebody's putting words to it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, he's speaking my language." But my personal instincts as a teacher are a little different. I don't really tend to talk a lot about ego death because I feel that it can also, even though it can put some people at rest because their experience is being named, it can also put a lot of people into a state of distress and fear at this notion of the ego dying. And so, I'm just usually pretty good about knowing who he's speaking to and what languaging to use with which person. But when, we're talking to bigger audiences and all kinds of people are listening in, it gets a little trickier. I think that Adia kind of intuitively um, senses what to say to a larger audience, and he's, speaking to, the majority that would resonate with his words. But sometimes there's ways that things can get in our psyche that can feel pretty spooky. So, what I would say to this person or those who have a concern with this idea of ego loss and ego death is that there's kind of healthy ego structures that I would say is a healthy psyche. A psyche that does have boundaries, that knows, like, just too much of that, time entertaining, not just entertaining, but consuming information about the atrocities that are happening in the world. Person can just kind of know when they've had too much and their psyche just puts the brakes on and they know. And they can kind of shield themselves from that and turn their attention toward the things in their home life or their family life or their work life or things like that. Um, I think that there's healthy structures, and we could say that healthy psyche, healthy ego structures are good things to have. When we're overly identified with a sense of separate self and our narrative swirls around that to exaggerated uh, way, then as we move out of that, we do feel this loss or this displacement from that way of being organized. So we could, but we actually do it all the time, like when we fall asleep or when we lose ourselves in an activity. We forget our our me. And sometimes those are the most pleasant times of our life is when we will forget that it's all about me. And that can be a good thing. So we do lose ego a lot, like throughout the day, in ways where we're absolutely fine with it and it doesn't terrify us. So there's a way of being more gentle with all of this, of not having a narrative about the death of the ego. So really look at that. Like, what if you could pretend like you'd never even ever heard of that? Or what if, I told you, like, the ego doesn't die. It just shifts to encompass a sense of self that isn't fundamentally founded in the ego. But the ego, like, registers a whole other order of being. Some people would argue with me, well, in that, doesn't the ego die? Well, it can go very offline. And it can go offline for a good long while, and then it can reemerge and then it can go offline. And sometimes it goes offline for a long, long, long time, maybe even permanently. Um, but I think it becomes then somewhat about semantics. Like, has the is if a person doesn't feel a sense of self, does that mean they have zero ego? I think it just depends how you define ego. If we define it as a push and pull and a sense of separation, that can dramatically shift. But it doesn't mean that um, this person will um, completely lose their sense of self. You could even say a person who abides in no self, that that's their sense of self. So um, just look at those beliefs and structures and see if your mind isn't creating a narrative that's then spooking itself. That's really what I'm trying to say.